Hey guys! So today I'm going to show you how to do this little electric thingy. Right. So first of all, let's go out. I'm going to turn this off and drop down a geo. And then I'm going to take that away, drop down a sphere, and make that a polygon. And then I'm going to drop down a color. Make this black. I'm going to drop down a transform. And I'm gonna move this guy over here, and then I'm gonna merge these together, and in that way I get two. So the first thing I want to do is I want to draw a polyline between these two. And I want to start to draw a polyline. I need two anchor points, one there and one there. And the easiest way, because now it's just like a bunch of points, the easiest way to get that is to pack each of these into a packed primitives, which is packing the geometry into a point. So I'm gonna drop down a pack, and I'm gonna do that with that guy, and then I'm gonna do that with that guy, and now I just have these 2 points. Cool. So then I'm gonna drop down and add. For now I don't want these geometries, so I'm just gonna delete geometry but keep the points. So now I only have 2 points that you can see here. And then I want a polyline between them, so I'm gonna go to polygons, and I'm gonna do a star, which means make a polyline between whatever comes in here. And I can of course not do very much with this. I need some more points. So I'm going to do a resample. So here's my resample, and I'm gonna take this segment length up a bit, something like this maybe. And then I'm gonna drop down an attribute VOP, and here is where we're gonna move these guys around. Attribute VOP. Cool. So I'm gonna drop down a curl noise. And the reason I'm using a curl noise is because I can do a 40 noise, which means I can take a point position and get that together with a time and make a vector 4 that way. So if I do a vector to a vector 4 and then take the point position in here and the time in here, now I have these moving points, you can say. So if I get that to the position here, that will move the noise around. And then I'm just going to make an add, and I'm going to add the current point position with this noise point position. And in that way I get some noise, and it looks not good at all. And the first thing I want to address is the speed of it. So I'm going to drop down and multiply by a constant, and I'm going to put that onto the time here, and I'm going to set that to 4, so now it's moving a little bit faster. Good. And then I'm also going to get up the frequency a little bit to 2, and I'm going to take the amplitude down to 3 maybe. The next thing I want to do is that, because now all the points are moving equally, and I want the anchor point not to move at all, and then less in here and most in the middle. So one way to do that is to drop down a ramp. So I'm going to drop down a ramp here, and for the ramp I'm going to have a spline ramp, and the ramp needs an input, and if the input is 0 it will be this value, and if the input be 1 it would be this value. In other words, I want this guy here to have a value of 0, and then I want to have like an input value that counts up until it's 1 at this point. And that is really easy to do. So let's go up and then drop down a wrangle. And then I'm going to do a float attribute UV. And this is equal to fit. And with a fit I can rescale a value. So I'm going to take the point number. The first point number is 0. So then what is the last point number? And that we can get by using endpoints. That is counting how many points we have. And then I want to say if the point number is 0, it's gonna be 0. If the point number will be the number of points, it's gonna be 1. So if we look here now, we can see we have this counting up. But as you can see, the last value is not 1. And the reason for that is because the point number starts at 0. So it's actually 14 points, but the last point number is 13. So we need to take these endpoints and do -1. So now you can see it starts at 0 and counts up to 1. Cool. So now we can take this and we can do a bind to get it, and then we can get a UV, and then we connect that to the input, and then we take, I'm going to move this out a little bit, I'm going to multiply this vector here. And if you multiply a vector with a scalar, that drives the length of a vector. So we're going to drive the length of it with this ramp. And now everything is flat, and the reason for that is because if we go out here, we don't have any values yet. So let's start, I'm going to make this a B-spline. And I'm going to do this little bump here in the middle, and now get the value up. So here is the middle of the curve, and you can see, if we play this, that this is moving, but the anchor points are not moving at all. Perfect. So the next thing I want to do is that I don't want it to go in all directions. I basically just want it to move in Y, and that is easy enough to do. So if we go in here and take the vector noise, I'm just going to do a vector to float, and then a float to vector. And I don't want X, I just want Y. So by doing this, so now I'm just taking the Y value, so that is the only thing that's driving it. So now we can see it's just moving in Y. Cool, that's good. One thing that we will notice though, if I'm starting to move this guy around, it's like down here it looks alright, but if I move it up here, suddenly you don't have anything at all. And that is just because now I'm just saying it's going in Y, but up here is actually X. So I actually don't want to just use Y. I want to use a vector that is telling the orientation of the whole thing. And the first thing we can do, we can use the orientation of the curve. So let's drop down a polyframe here. And in polyframe, you can get the normals and the tangents. So if we take this here and just look what we get. So if I do I click X and get this visualize, and then I'm gonna start with the normal, and then I'm gonna do marker, vector, and then I'm gonna start moving this guy around. Well, you see that you have this vector. Well, it's not the vector we want, but we can also see it's flipping, so it's not good at all. And if we do another vector, if we do tangent V, that actually is kind of what we want, but it's just that it's flipping as well, so it's not really working. So the only thing we have left then is tangent U, and tangent U is going in this direction. So we actually need to create our own vector. We can use a cross product. And a cross product, if you take two vectors, like this guy, and I do a cross product of these two guys, I'm gonna get a vector that is perpendicular to the plane they are creating together. So if I would take this guy and do a cross product, the other vector would be like this, which would be perpendicular to the plane that these two vectors creates together. It's a very useful thing to be able to do. So let's go back and do that. So if we go down in our attribute up here, I have one vector that is this tangent U. And because I'm doing a bit of a cheat in this tutorial and just moving the sphere in one plane, then I can just set the other vector to 1 in Z. So if I do a constant and set this guy to 1 in Z, and then do a bind, and this bind would be this tangent U, and then I do a cross product with these two guys, like so. If I would visualize that one, and then go to marker, vector, and then let's go here, and then if I move this guy, and I go in here. Oh, I forgot to put this to a vector. So now you can see if I move this guy around in this plane, we have this new vector, and it's not flipping, so it's exactly what we want. Perfect. So let's take that vector. So we can remove this crappy vector, and then we can take this first, put this here in the multiply first. And like I said before, if I take a scalar and multiply vector, I can drive the length, because now I have this float here in Y. I can multiply that, and then I multiply the ramp at the end. So in this way, I now suddenly have something that works. So if I do go here, and then I'm gonna move this guy around, now it's actually working. But like I said before, this is just because I'm moving this around in this plane I'm doing. Right, so the next thing we need to do then is just to make some geometry of this. So I'm gonna do polywire, connect these two guys. I'm gonna drop down a normal, like so, and drop down a color. And I'm gonna do this blue, and I'm gonna merge this with the two guys up there. So like so. And then I'm gonna visualize this, and I turn off points, and now if we play this, we have our little rig. I hope that you found this useful, and see you next time.